believe the Bible is true?
Has science proven the Bible wrong?
Is creation and evolution a side issue?
Our ancestors understood origins by extrapolating from their own experience. How else could they have done it? Then science came along and taught us that we are not the measure of all
The
things.
simplest explanation is, there is no God. No one created the universe, and no one directs our fate.
You and I are the product of billions
We share a
of
common
years,
ancestor
billions of years.
with chimpanzees.
This animal eventually became human.
I'm sorry, but if you don't understand that humans and monkeys came from a common ancestor...
single out evolution and act as if there's some kind of major scientific dispute, and in fact...
Evolution is a fact, not a theory.
Evolution is a fact. I mean, that's right. There's no question.
Evolution isn't an opinion, it's fact.
Evolution is scientific fact.
I'm sorry, I believe in evolution.
Lived in the ocean 200 million years ago.
8 million years ago,
We emerged from microbes and muck.
We're going to get started fairly soon, so if you could please take your seats, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, is this on? All right, everybody. I don't want to give that graceful several minutes like typical when we start things, because I've got about 3 hours of material and 45 minutes to give it. So we'll just let people walk in late, that's fine. We have a giant issue in one particular field of study, and that is the field of dinosaurs. Because you hear the word dinosaur, it's immediately connected to evolution and millions of years. And young people especially really struggle with this field, but I'm going to tell you that this is not what the evolutionists think. We have written a lot of stuff about dinosaurs in our magazine, on our website, and all the books, videos, things we have out here. We got tons of material, but we have to ask this one very important question. How do you fit dinosaurs into the Bible? That's an honest question. Well, even worse, how do you fit dinosaurs into Creation Week? Man didn't live with dinosaurs according to archaeology. How do we explain why we don't find human bones with dinosaur bones? How do we explain why we don't find dinosaurs alive today? Hey, why does that do that? Stop that. Behave. All right, so we're going to get into the field of dinosaurs. We have to also know what a dinosaur is. How does a dinosaur differ from an iguana or a crocodile? Well, several big differences. One is that dinosaur legs stick down. They walk kind of similar to you and me. They bore their weight on their legs. All the other reptiles alive today, except for snakes, their legs stick out to the side. So already there is a structural difference. Dinosaurs are a unique group of reptiles. I remember as a kid reading those accounts of people living to really long ages in Genesis. I said, oh, what if like an iguana or an anole lived to like 100 or 500 or 600, 800 years? Would it morph into a T-Rex? The answer is no. They are different. But we can take all the dinosaurs in the world and split them into two groups. We have the lizard-hipped dinosaurs and the bird-hipped dinosaurs. Lizard-hipped, bird-hipped. And the difference is, if you look at some of the hip bones here, we have the pubis for the lizards, they stick down. The bird-hip, they stick forward. And the ischium is rotated nearly 90 degrees down compared to the other. So all the dinosaurs in the world, we can split into two groups. Interesting. Take a guess which one of these the evolutionists believes evolved into birds. The lizard-hipped dinosaurs or the bird-hipped dinosaurs? Yes, of course, the lizard-hipped dinosaurs. So there are some difficulties in the fossil record and in anatomy, and you got to learn a lot of stuff to really understand the topic. But if we take away the leg bones and look at the hip socket of dinosaurs, we realize something very strange. You have what's called a ball and socket hip. You have a cup, and the head of the femur sits in the cup. Dinosaurs aren't like that. They got a hole in their hip, and they have three bones that come together, and there's like a ridge on the top of these things that keeps the femur from popping out, but they have a hole in their hip. Hey, are you learning things you didn't know? Okay, I'm trying not to use big words. I'm just giving you the lightweight words. But this is what dinosaurs are. We need to learn about them so we can understand. Now, this is not like a bird hip at all. Birds don't have a hole in their hip. Oh. Not only that, you see these long bony tails? Do birds have long bony tails? No. They've got a little nub on their rear end. It's called the pygostyle. It's some fused, very stiff vertebrae, and from that, we have muscles and attachment things, and we have long, in fact, like a peacock has long feathers. Those feathers are sticking off this little nub on their rear end called the pygostyle. Notice what else birds have. They have a keel on their sternum. You ever eaten chicken? Pull the white meat off the chicken, there's a thing there. What is that? It's an anchor point for the muscles. It makes the muscles much stronger. One reason birds can fly is because of that keel. You're never going to fly. You cannot have chest muscles strong enough. Something else weird about a bird. It has a beak. What's a beak? Just keratin that sticks on the front of their skull. They have a jaw. They have all the parts you have, and they just have this keratin thing that sticks out, sometimes big, sometimes little. Something else weird about birds is that their knees bend backwards. Oh, wait a minute. That's not the knee. That's his heel. These are all toes and feet. Where's his knee? It's up here, welded to his rib cage. And it's hollow. He breathes through his leg bone. What? This is bizarre. The evolution of birds from dinosaurs, which I don't believe, but in the evolution of birds from dinosaurs, somehow the dinosaur knee would have to be welded to the rib cage, become hollow, and all of a sudden he's breathing through his leg. That's hard, man. I can imagine all sorts of ways for that to go wrong. I can imagine all sorts of ways to kill a reptile as supposedly evolving into a bird-like form. And I can't imagine a transitional form that's going to let this happen. But there you have it. You just learned a lot about birds. In fact, the next time you eat a chicken, I bet you're going to be like looking at its rear end, saying, oh yeah, that's what Carter talked about. Or you're going to dig into here. It's like, oh, that's that. There's even cooler things in birds too, but we'll get to that in a minute. Something else weird about dinosaurs. They have in their skull an extra set of holes behind the eyeball holes. That sets them apart. They're different from the other reptiles, and they're different from birds. This extra set of holes. The question we have then is, what happened to the dinosaurs? Where'd they go? I read an article on creation.com called Dinosaurs Are Almost Certainly Extinct, and my boss made me put the phrase almost certainly. Because there are a lot of creations that talk about living dinosaurs. I just don't believe it. I have no evidence that there are living dinosaurs in the Congo area called Mokele Mbembe. It might be true, but we've got no... let's say it this way. 30 years ago, reports came out about living dinosaurs in the southwest Pacific Ocean and in Africa, some people claiming in the western United States, and 0 of those reports have been confirmed. I cannot afford, because I'm already held to a double standard, I can't use information that I can't defend. So it might be true, sure. But you know what? If we found a living dinosaur, would that prove evolution wrong? No. You know what they'd say? Oh, what do you know? One of those things managed to hold on all these years. I say that because they did the same thing when they found the coelacanth alive off of Madagascar in the 1930s, that stumpy-legged fish that they thought was transitional between the water and land, that turned out to be not transitional at all and unchanged, supposedly over millions and millions of years. They said, hey, look at that, the coelacanth is still alive. It didn't prove evolution wrong. Plus, they think that birds are dinosaurs, so they don't think dinosaurs went extinct anyway. Problem is this. Or let's say it this way. What killed off the dinosaurs? What do we hear everywhere in the media? What do we hear? A big meteor. Does anyone know how long ago that was in the evolutionary model? They say 65 million years ago. No, I know that number. I know the evolutionary numbers. I know a lot of evolutionary numbers because I need to know my stuff. Study your opponent sort of thing. I need to know that model and all the things they say so that I can defend my views against it. But supposedly 65 million years ago, a big meteor hit the Yucatan Peninsula, caused so much ash to go up in the atmosphere, it cooled off the earth and killed the dinosaurs. But not the turtles. And not the crocodiles. And not the butterflies. We have fossils of every major branch in the butterfly and moth family tree. How on earth did they survive the thing that killed off the dinosaurs? You know what? I don't have an answer to this. I don't know why the dinosaurs died out. I just believe they're gone. My best answer is that they did not do well in the post-flood world where the environment is radically different than it was before. That's not a very satisfying answer, but that's my best answer. But butterflies and moths just kept on trucking. And all sorts of other things that you would recognize that are buried with dinosaurs are still around today. This is weird. I don't think that the meteorite theory is satisfactory because it can't explain things like this. But how many species of dinosaurs are there? Who can name a species of dinosaur? I've heard none. Wow. T-Rex, Velociraptor, Stegosaurus. Do you think that between us we could name 30 species of dinosaurs? 50? 100? How many were there? Were there millions of species of dinosaurs? Hundreds or dozens? Well, the answer is there's about 500 or 600 named species, and about 1/3 of the species that have been named in the past have been erased just over the last several years. Because they've dug up more and more, they realize, oh, that's just a juvenile of the other one. So they've literally erased 1/3 of the names. But when we find a dinosaur, I mean, if they found a ceratopsid toe bone, you say, oh, it's a ceratopsid. It would be obviously a ceratopsid. It looks like a different toe bone than all the other types of dinosaurs. But you wouldn't know what species it is if you just had a toe bone. So how many species of like ceratopsids were there? Well, maybe a dozen at most. There's 11 there. Oh, I guess Microceratops is not there and Protoceratops is not there. Maybe 20 total. But they're all very similar. They have a beak, they have some horns, they have a frill, they have a similar body shape. You can tell that they belong to a group. But how many species are there? I don't know, because geologists use, or paleontologists use a different definition of the word species than I do. I'm a biologist. I say if two things can interbreed, they're the same species. I can't interbreed these things. How many species are standing here in the grass? That's the world's largest dog standing next to the world's smallest dog. And I can guarantee you that paleontologists found bones of these animals in the fossil record and they didn't know what dogs were, they'd say they're both carnivores, sure, but they would not put them in the same species. They wouldn't put them in the same genus. They're radically different from one each other according to evolution. And Darwin taught us that species change very slowly over millions of years. No, they don't. They change very quickly. These breeds didn't even exist 100 years ago. They change quickly because God put into their genomes the ability to change and adapt over time. Oh, how many species are there? I don't know. I suspect maybe one. When we look at all the dinosaurs, we can break them down into about 50 basic kinds. Sure, you got the ceratopsids and the duck-billed hadrosaurs, the tank-like ankylosaurs, and the stegosaurs with the plates in their back. You got the long sauropods, you got the theropods. What's a theropod? This is a theropod. And they're the challenge, actually, because they're the meat eaters. Almost all dinosaurs are plant eaters. But the theropods, like Tyrannosaurus rex, got 6-inch long teeth. How would he have originally been described? Who says he's an herbivore? Who says he's a carnivore? Who says he's a scavenger? How about an omnivore? How about this is a trick question? Originally described according to whom? The evolutionists who discovered him in the 1800s? Or the Bible? Oh. Genesis chapter 1, God's talking to Adam. He says, see, I've given you every herb that yields seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth in which there's life, I've given every green herb for food, and it was so. All right, Christian, answer this question. Did God create all animals to eat plants, yes or no? Does that include dinosaurs? Then why do some dinosaurs eat meat? Oh. Well, we can apply something I talked about earlier, and I'll talk about again the next hour, what we call the curse. When Adam rebelled against God, and God said, cursed is the ground because of you, and pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life, suffering came in, hunger came in. The dominant tree here, 110, 120 years ago, was the American chestnut. None of you have ever seen an American chestnut. They got wiped out by a fungus. There were reports of chipmunks, oh, cute little chipmunks, running out onto the road and eating roadkill because their food was gone and they were hungry. Yeah, even chipmunks can be carnivorous when they're hungry. Consider what your ancestors ate over time. Ugh. We ate every part of the pig. We ate really gross things. You go further back in time, you're talking about like worms and things you scrape off a tree bark. I mean, we ate gross things because we were hungry. And we're generalists. God made us to eat anything. But speaking of dinosaurs specifically, we have to be really careful because science is fickle. Science will rip the rug right out from underneath you when you're not paying attention. And this happened a couple years ago. We wrote an article about carnivorous dinosaurs called Vegetarian Theropod Dinosaurs. See, what's happened is paleontology has gotten more sophisticated over the years. back in the day, they dig up a bone, they bring the skeleton to the museum and set it up, and charge admission to go see these amazing dinosaurs. But modern paleontologists are going back to those same sites they dug out from years ago, and they're looking at it, and their heads hang low, and they say they destroyed everything. Because the bone hunters in the 1800s weren't looking for the little dinosaurs. They dug right through them. They weren't looking through the mammals. They broke them up. They weren't looking for the plants. They were looking for the fierce, big dinosaurs. And now that we realize that, when they find a dinosaur in a rock, they don't just dig it out. They will actually examine the rock. And what they've seen many times is sometimes there's an outline of the animal's body, like the rock was stained, like it decomposed after it was buried. And sometimes when you have an articulated dinosaur skeleton, you say, oh, there's the heart, there's the liver, there's the stomach. And they've been taking the rock that where the stomach was and taking it out and cutting it and looking at it, and they can see what the dinosaur had been eating. And lo and behold, most of the theropod stomachs are packed with plant materials. So we know that even though they had the forward-pointing eyes like a predator and a sharp claws, we know they were eating plants. I thought they were meat eaters. Most of them were not. Some of them, yes. Some of them crunched up bones in their stomach, baby dinosaurs, mammals. We know that they're eating meat. Most of them, though, were not. Let me give you a modern example. When a bear is not living near humans, what do bears eat? Black bears. 99% of their diet is plants. What do polar bears eat? 99% of their diet is meat. But polar bears and black bears have the same teeth. They have the same claws. Those claws that God gave to bears to dig out a burrow, to sleep in all winter, or to dig up roots, and those teeth, a black bear can take a blueberry branch, put it in his mouth, and go, whoop, and pull the blueberries off and leave the leaves on the stem. Those teeth are genius. The polar bear has the same teeth, and those claws, they can hold down a seal. They can use their teeth to rip into its flesh. It's the same stuff, though. The things that God gave to bears to eat plants can also be used to eat meat. And honestly, as bears are spreading out on the earth after Noah's flood, some of them went far north where it's really cold. Now, I believe a mutation destroyed the melanin-producing gene in their fur, so now they're white and they're camouflaged. But that's called adaptation. The other thing I'm talking about is called exaptation. It's when you take a tool and use it for something it wasn't designed for. For example, you ever hung a picture on the wall? You know those plastic things? You poke a hole in the drywall and you put the plastic thing in, you put the little screw, and you hang up the picture, right? How many times have you done that and you forgot to bring a hammer with you? How are you going to poke a hole in the drywall? Oh, I got a screwdriver. So you hold up a screw, you turn the screwdriver around, and go pop, 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 pop. You ever done that? That's exaptation. You just use a screwdriver as a hammer. And it works just fine in that application. Same thing. I believe this is the way we explain where carnivory came from. God gave animals tools that can also be used to eat meat, even though that wasn't the original purpose. And it came about because of the curse. But we know that dinosaurs were eating meat. This is a T-Rex tooth embedded between two vertebrae of a duck-billed dinosaur. And the crazy thing is, it healed up around the tooth, meaning this hadrosaur survived a T-Rex attack and walked around the rest of his life in a tremendous amount of pain because of the tooth in his spine. Ugh. That's cool, but it's sad. But that's the fossil record. Oh, by the way, when we look at the fossil record, should we expect it to reflect the Garden of Eden? No, because the world before the flood was so wicked and so full of violence that God said, I'm done with it. I'm going to push a reset button, send a giant flood, and bury everything. And the fossil record is a record of a wicked, violent world. It should not surprise us to see things like this. But Darwin looked at something like this, not this exactly, and he said things like, how could a good and loving God have created a world like that? The answer is, God didn't. This is not the world that God created. It's a world that had fallen into corruption. Okay, talking about dinosaurs, talking about the Bible. Is there any evidence that dinosaurs died during a big flood? Really? Oh yeah, tons actually. You've all seen it. In fact, we see this picture so much that evolutionary paleontologists, they just call this a dead dinosaur posture. For a long time, they didn't know why. Because when animals die, they don't arch backwards. But when long-necked animals drown, they do. They finally figured this out about 5 years ago. This is evidence of drowning. And they say, yeah, this animal drowned. And we get to ask now, how come so many land animals, like dinosaurs, are buried with fish and clams? They drown. Oh. Remember the first Jurassic Park movie? What was that, 1988 or something like that? The opening scene, they're out in the desert, they're in a tent, they get this machine that goes boom in the ground. They do that and they run into the tent and there's this computer. Remember how fast computers were back then? It drew a picture. And there's a picture of the velociraptor, all arched backwards. Because it was so ingrained in their mind that they didn't even bother to ask why it was in that pose. But if they did it today, oh yeah, that thing drowned, evidence of Noah's flood. But wait a minute, does Noah have a problem? How we can get monstrous animals inside Noah's Ark? Animals that could not get through the doors in this room. And if it was in this room, I wouldn't want to be in the room with it. How do we get animals like that onto the ark? Well, actually, this is not even a challenge. There's multiple ways to answer this. First of all, when you look at those 50 basic groups of dinosaurs, there are big species and little species. There are little sauropods, full grown. There are little theropods, full grown. Here's Consignathus, he's the size of a chicken, full grown. Second, all dinosaurs came from eggs. Now, I don't think Noah took eggs on the ark, but why couldn't he have taken a hatchling? Why couldn't he have taken a juvenile? Why couldn't he have taken a teenager? He doesn't have to take great-great-granddaddy Apatosaurus, who's near the end of his life. Taking Junior. Just makes it easier. Now, we also have to ask the question, how many dinosaurs did Noah have to take? How many? Millions? Well, two of every kind. How many basic kinds of dinosaurs are there? About 50. What's 50 times 2? 100. That's how many dinosaurs you had to take. And even if you had to take the full-grown ones, there's still room on the ark. So it's actually not a problem at all. It's easier if you take small ones, but even if you take the biggest ones, there's room on the ark for the animal and a year's worth of food and water, plus all of the other animals. We're talking 500 or 600 pairs of animals total, if you draw it at the level of the family. Oh, it's not even a problem. If you want to draw at the level of the genus, 12, 13, 14,000 pairs of animals. It's a lot of animals, but there's still room. And we've run the calculations, and Noah's Ark works. It's a lot of work. I wouldn't want to be on the ark when the fleas break out. And I wouldn't have to shovel after a dinosaur. But with proper management, oh, by the way, the animals don't have to be happy. They just got to live to the end. They could be standing in their own excrement for a year, and they get off the ark. Woohoo, I'm finally out of that stink hole. This is doable. But with good management, there are definitely ways to get them fed, watered, and cleaned up and keep them clean. Easy ways. We've worked that out. You'll find information on creation.com. All right. You ever seen a picture like this? The age of dinosaurs. Notice the picture. There's no mammals. There's no birds. There's no grass. Those are ferns. No grass. Those three things are completely and utterly wrong. First of all, I was taught, even in graduate school, grasses didn't evolve till 35 million years ago. So if dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago and grasses evolved 35 million years ago, grasses were never with dinosaurs, clearly. Except, not only do we find the dinosaur gut contents, we find phytoliths that are only made by grasses. All the major families of grasses exist, not anywhere in the fossil record, except in dinosaur stomachs and in dinosaur dung piles that have been petrified. All the grasses are there. We know grasses live with dinosaurs, but the fossil record is fickle. Not everything is preserved at every level. But not only that, we found as many species of mammals that live with dinosaurs as we have species of dinosaurs, including things that look like flying squirrels. Something, it is a platypus. Something looks like a badger, looks like a beaver. Something looks really like a hedgehog. And weird, hedgehogs, they're not porcupines. Hedgehogs have unique hairs. There's no other animal on earth that has hairs like a hedgehog. And that animal was buried with his hairs. He's the size and shape of a hedgehog, and his hair is like a hedgehog. What? So next time they do a Jurassic Park movie, they better clone a hedgehog and have it running under the underbrush. But look at the dates. This MA, you know what that means? That's mega annum, or millions of years ago. This badger-like creature lived 130 million years ago. So 65 million years ago, 130 million years ago, that's before the evolutionists believed the dinosaurs even evolved. We had normal-like mammals. Now, you know that the main two different branches of mammals today? You've got the marsupials like kangaroos and the placentals like us. There's another group of animals that's extinct. In fact, it only went extinct recently. They're called multituberculates. They got bumps all over their teeth, tubercles on their teeth. This is a multituberculate equivalent of a flying squirrel. But this platypus, see that groove in the jaw? You know what that is? That's for the giant nerve that goes to the platypus bill. That electrosensitive nerve bill thing, that's what that is. Now, these guys have teeth. Modern platypuses don't have teeth. But it's also twice as big as a platypus. But these things are readily identifiable. We know what these things are, at least, and these things are equivalent to, maybe not modern mammals, but they're definitely mammals. Here's a really cool one. This is Rapenomamus robustus, biting on a Psittacosaurus. See the two skeletons? This is not the only one. We have another Rapenomamus robustus skeleton with a baby Psittacosaurus in his stomach. So in the morning of Noah's flood, this animal ate a dinosaur for breakfast. That's really cool. You ever see the movie Hidden Figures? Kevin Costner, those African-American ladies who are doing all the calculation to get the man to the moon. Well, that place really does exist in Maryland, the NASA facility, and women really do work there. Sorry, bad joke. This guy dropped off his wife a couple years ago, and as he's going through the parking lot, he saw this pile of rocks in the woods. I think it's the stuff they dug out for the foundation of the building. They pushed it aside, and trees grew up around it. And he just said, I want to go look at these rocks. I do this all the time. I'm a rock nerd. I love rocks. And he found a world-class specimen in this rubble pile. It's about this big. And in this rock, there are sauropod footprints. There are pterosaur footprints. There are nodosaur, which is like an ankylosaur without the club on his tail. Nodosaur footprints. There is an osteoderm, or a skin bone, because dinosaurs are armor-plated, from a nodosaur, and a coprolite, a piece of fossilized dinosaur dung, in the same rock. And in blue, mammal footprints. Dinosaurs, pterosaurs, which are not dinosaurs, different group of reptiles, and mammals were all living at the same time. Fossils aren't just bones. This is a fossil of the behavior pattern of a community of organisms who all walk through the same mud puddle. And that mud was instantly covered, because mud doesn't last a long time, and then the rock were petrified in that shape during the flood. That is really, really cool. All right, I'm going to end my time here by talking about birds again, because we all hear that birds evolved from dinosaurs. I'm going to throw some curveballs into that. First of all, when we look at ancient birds, a lot of them have teeth. They might not have a keel, but they have a beak. What's a beak? It's keratin, right? They got a jaw, but you know what? One thing a bird can do that you can't do? It can raise its upper jaw. Their palate slides in and out. You can't do that. Ancient birds could. They had beaks. They had the pygostyle. They had feathers. There's one modern bird, though, that genetically is different than all the other birds alive today. It's called the hoatzin, or the stink bird of South America. And hoatzins have fully functional wing claws, just like a lot of ancient birds. Now, they don't have a keel on their sternum either. It's the only bird without a keel, modern bird. That looks very much like an Archaeopteryx. It's the right size and the right shape, and a lot of the same features. Now, one thing it doesn't have is teeth. But a lot of the evolutionists today are saying, oh no, teeth development takes a long time. You would have to be in the egg for a long time to grow teeth. Birds develop too quickly. So what it is, it's a fallback to a more juvenile position, modern birds. They grow too quickly, therefore they don't have time to develop teeth. And bird teeth in the fossil record don't look like reptile teeth. Reptiles have these peg-like teeth, sword-like teeth. The ancient birds have peg-like teeth. They look more like a dolphin tooth. They kind of do that. They're different. Here's an ancient bird from the fossil record, Anchiornis huxleyi, named after one of Charles Darwin's good friends, Huxley. Supposedly 160 million years ago, so 100 million years before the dinosaurs supposedly went extinct, we had this very bird-like creature. Can you see the feathers? Can feathers be preserved in the fossil record, yes or no? Absolutely. No dinosaur has any feather that looks like this. They do have fuzzy things, yes, we'll get to that in a second, but not like this. There's wings, he's got a beak, he's got, it very much looks like a bird. He's got teeth and wing claws. Here's the only bird fossil ever found that has an egg on the inside, petrified with the egg, but the egg has multiple layers of eggshell. What? Yeah, if you don't let the bird roost every day, it's going to put down another layer of eggshell. If you don't let it lay the egg. So this only bird we've ever found with an egg in it found no place to rest. It could not roost. And it lasted several days into the flood before it finally died. And it sank and got buried and petrified, and the egg got petrified with multiple layers of eggshell. That's really cool. Here's another amazing bird fossil. You see the little chicken feet? He's got wings, he's got a beak. Now what you can't see, even though it's here, you can see it under a microscope, are his lungs. Bird lungs are strange. They're not like normal lungs. They're not like you and me. We breathe in, we breathe out. We have our balloon-like lungs go, and we have a diaphragm that does that to inflate the balloon-like lungs. Our oxygen goes down about this far and stops, and then it diffuses into the bottom of the lung, where it's absorbed. And the carbon dioxide diffuses out where it's exhaled. But we don't have, the bottom part of our lung is dead airspace. Birds aren't like that. They might breathe in and out the nose, but then the air goes around the bottom of the lungs, it comes all the way through the lungs. There's no dead airspace. So they can pull a lot more oxygen out of the air than we can. They have a hole in the bottom of their lungs. Reptiles have a diaphragm like us. Sometimes their liver's attached to the diaphragm, the muscles move the liver. That's how they breathe. But this is weird. So in the evolution of reptiles to birds, the first step for the lung would have to be, a hole has to be poked in the bottom of the reptile lung. And then it dies. This is a massive problem. In fact, birds have a 4-part breathing system. They breathe in, the air goes to the lower air sac. They breathe out, the air moves into lungs. They breathe in, the air goes to the upper air sacs. They breathe out, and they breathe out the upper air sac. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That evolved from a reptile lung? And the thing survived in the process? No, birds are brilliantly and beautifully designed. They are marvels of engineering in multiple different ways. And evolution really cannot explain them. Now, do dinosaur fossils have feathers? I don't care. The Bible does not say dinosaurs did not have feathers. It doesn't say anything about that at all. I'm a nerd, I want to know, but my faith is not going to be challenged if we find feathered dinosaurs. Just, we don't find any dinosaurs that have feathers like birds have. None. But I remember being young and looking at things like the fossil record and being utterly convinced that evolution was true. Look, this is the Mesozoic era, the Cretaceous, the Jurassic, the Triassic. Now, most all the dinosaurs you see in the Jurassic Park movie franchise are actually Cretaceous dinosaurs. Don't take me to watch sci-fi. I ruin it. But this is the Mesozoic era. And we've got all these dinosaur fossils, and they all go back to a common ancestor. And I remember saying, oh, look at that. Evolution is true. But what I wasn't wise enough to do yet was to cover up all the dotted lines and look at the evidence that they had. The evidence is 50 family sticks. You've heard of the missing link between man and monkey? There's missing links between almost every major group of animal on Earth and every other one, including all the dinosaurs. There's no evidence for the evolution of dinosaurs. The group of dinosaurs appears in the fossil record and it disappears at some other time. There should be millions upon millions upon millions of transitional species between the groups. And there are literally none. So I'm going to do something else here. I'm going to draw red lines on these things. I'm going to shove everything off to the side because I want to put in the same context all the mammals and birds I just showed you. That's the same data. Those red lines are the same data. Now, this is where I was talking about mammals and birds. They didn't appear to the end of the dinosaur era. But no, we got mammals that go through the entire dinosaur era, including birds. Now, if you were to classify humans, we are animals, we are vertebrates, we are mammals, we are primates. We group with a certain group of apes. Their chimpanzees are more similar to humans than anything else. Okay, fine. That's just the way God made it. When we do the same thing with birds, they cluster with reptiles. They cluster with a subgroup of reptiles. Okay. That doesn't mean evolution is true. It just means that we don't have a definition of the word reptile anymore. Because reptiles used to lay soft eggs and they were cold-blooded. And no, now there's some reptiles in the evolutionary scheme that lay hard eggs and are warm-blooded and have feathers. So that does not bother me. It's just this hierarchical pattern that God created. But when we look at birds, there are very bird-like things that exist about the same time as this group that I was told evolved into birds, like at the end of the dinosaur era. Birds go throughout almost the whole thing. Now, I have a question mark, we don't have a lot of ancient bird fossils. We got about 100 Confuciusornis fossils from China and a handful of others, because birds don't petrify well. But it wasn't like some mouse-like animal lived at the end of the dinosaur era, because recently they discovered a rhinoceros-sized mammal from the Triassic. So even big mammals lived during the dinosaur supposed era. All right, feathered dinosaurs. This is the poster child of the feathered dinosaur, Sinosauropteryx. 120 million years old, supposedly. And of course, I don't believe the dates. I'm just using them. And there's this fuzzy stuff that goes down his back. And we were beat over the head with this for like a decade, saying feathered dinosaurs, feathered dinosaurs, feathered dinosaurs. But one enterprising scientist looked at this under a microscope. He says, oh, I can see the skin. All this fuzz is underneath the skin. And he said, I quote, and it is obvious to anyone who looks. Why was not obvious to the first people that looked? Because they wanted to see feathers. I think this much better explanation is that this is decayed collagen. Collagen is tough. Collagen lasts a long time. After all the internal organs are wasted away, this tough collagen is still there. And it frays like that because it's very fibrous. This is what you get when collagen decays. Also, a lot of reptiles have frills and ridges and things like that on them. What is preventing this animal from having a frill that ran down his back that was still partially petrified? Now, if they have feathers, great. I'm fine with that. I'm just not convinced. Now, this is a turkey vulture wing. When you strip away the feathers, you see these knobs. These are called quill knobs. It's attachment point, a little muscle that attaches the bone to the feather so they can move their feathers. They need a muscle to do that. This is a velociraptor arm bone, and the second one is gray. See this rectangle? That's this gray one. And there's 6 arrows pointing to these little teeny dots that you can't even see, but these are supposedly quill knobs. But nobody believes that velociraptors could fly. Why would they have quill knobs? Penguins don't have quill knobs. Ostriches don't have quill knobs. Not even all the flying birds have quill knobs. Why would they have quill knobs at all? Maybe they had a spike or something that was erected with a muscle, or maybe that's just the imagination of the science person. But again, if they have feathers, I'm not challenged. It's okay. I'm just, again, saying I'm not convinced. We know T-Rex did not have any evidence of feathers at all. We have skin fossils from different parts of the T-Rex skeleton. To have a feather, there has to be a hole in the skin, a big hole. Feathers are wider than hairs, and hairs and feathers both come out of follicles. In fact, a feather is like a hyper-complex hair because it comes out and then unfurls into these amazing structures. And T-Rex had none. Okay, in my last 6 minutes, I'm going to try to impress upon you that dinosaur fossils cannot be millions of years old. If we can show they can't be millions of years old according to science, the whole evolution story just falls apart. And all of a sudden, I really don't care if dinosaurs have feathers or not, because I cannot believe that they evolved if the fossils can't be millions of years old. So let me give you 3 or 4 different reasons why. 1, we have found non-petrified material in a lot of different dinosaurs now, including also mosasaurs, also pterosaurs. But this is material from the inside of a horn of a triceratops. And under an electron microscope, you can see all these, you know what these blobs are with the spikes? Those are osteoblasts, bone cells, intact over 65 million years? What? Here's the material that came from the inside of a Tyrannosaurus rex leg bone. Wait a minute. This is flexible tissue. This is blood vessels. These are red blood cells. And unlike you and me, reptiles have nuclei in their red blood cells. Look, there's nucleuses in there. What? I can't leave a ham sandwich on the counter for a week before it starts turning green. Could I take a pig and bury it in my backyard for like 100 years and expect to find any pig? No, it'd be eaten. What about 1,000 years? How about millions of years? This is non-petrified dinosaur material. And there's evidence in this material of DNA. Now, that's my field. There's no way DNA lasts millions of years. Now, we haven't sequenced. I know 3 labs that are trying to sequence dinosaur DNA. They have not yet been able to do it. There's evidence of little bits of DNA that has broken down over time. Great. But these things are 4,500 years old. That's how long ago they got buried in the flood. I am shocked that there's any DNA left at all. If you take a stain, it's called DAPI. It's a flat molecule, and it sticks into the coils of DNA. If you have at least 25 letters or so, there's enough there, it can stick in there. You wash the thing with the stain, and you wash it with water, and the stain sticks in the DNA. It lights up what looks like nuclei inside intact dinosaur cells. But bacteria have DNA. Maybe it's bacterial DNA. Well, these scientists did another test. They used another stain that stains a protein that bacteria don't have. But you have it, and reptiles have it. It's called a histone. It's the proteins that DNA wraps around in a nucleus. And that protein gets stained inside what looks like a nucleus. They can also use antibodies for DNA, and it lights up what looks like a nucleus. So we've got soft tissue and DNA. Both of those things say, no, these things can't be millions of years old. Not only that, there's a book that we carry on our web store, Untold Secrets of Planet Earth, Dire Dragons. And this is just one of multiple reports, but in here is a reproduction of a letter from the University of Georgia Radiocarbon Lab. Dear Mr. Nelson, the author, don't send us any more samples. Because he was sending them dinosaur bone to carbon date, and they're coming back with datable numbers. Carbon dating cannot be used for millions of years. The theoretical maximum from the carbon dating test is about 70,000 years before there's not enough carbon-14 in the sample to detect. And it was coming back less than that. Now, it wasn't coming back 4,000 years old because it looks like in the world before the flood, there was almost no carbon-14. Because carbon-14 has no biological use. It looks like God made the earth with no carbon-14. It was building up slowly over time, and then the dinosaurs died out. They had some carbon-14 in them, which is datable. Point is, they can't be millions of years old. So which branch of science do you want to reject? The idea that there's soft tissue, DNA, or carbon-14. You have 3 completely independent branches of science that are all telling us these things are not millions of years old. That's really exciting. I'm very, very, very happy to report that. More information in Creation Magazine. A lot more information. This wonderful book, Titans of the Earth, Sea, and Air. Big, fat book, anything you can want to know about dinosaurs from a creation perspective. Biblical Geology 101, which I mentioned earlier, and I'll mention later, a great book on geology, Exploring Dinosaurs, a little kid's book here. Now, it's a little schizophrenic. This book has a lot of words, but also has cartoons in it. So we're trying to hit that transition point before, once someone's like 12, 13, 14 years old, well, come on, Mom, I'm not going to read a book with cartoons in it. But it's a great book. I would highly recommend that. I learned things in this I did not know. We've got a dinosaur pack out on the tables, but all this, I'm going to point you to 1 Peter 3:15 and step down. In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that's in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. And I hope I gave you something you can use to defend your faith against very aggressive atheists who are trying to shove dinosaurs down your throat. Because the picture is not what they say. Thank you. I'll see you in the next hour.